Everybody cries for this, right?
Don't give up! Natural ability, just natural.
I haven't had sex with a woman.
I don't know how that works.
Make like an egg and beat it.
And he was infectious, and he was kind, and he was a puppy dog.
He was this boy that wanted to do good, but then there was this other side of him. So his whole life was this constant battle.
Success in show business does not always create the best version of people.
So many great moments when we look at the legacy of Chris Farley. I Am Chris Farley, the new documentary out. Your chance to screen it in Vancouver tonight at the Rio Theater. Kevin Farley joining us, brother of Chris, Derik and Brent, co-directors on this project. Congratulations on this, and you can't help but get nostalgic looking at this. Why was this the right time to tell Chris's story?
You know, it's interesting, Riaz. I mean, it's hard to imagine that Chris actually passed away 18 years ago. And, you know, at Network Entertainment, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of iconic individuals that we celebrated. Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Steve McQueen, Evel Knievel. And when Brent and I looked at comedy, top of the mountain, Chris Farley.
And how did you get all of these comedic icons on board for this? Because looking at it, you knew Chris worked with them, and seeing these clips with Letterman too were terrific.
Well, they were all friends, you know. I mean, they were all friends of Chris, so I just called them up, and I knew that they had a lot of love, and that came out in the film, how much they appreciated Chris and loved working with him. So, you know, I just asked. I said, "Do you want to sit down and talk a little bit about Chris and you know, some stories?" There's a million stories, by the way, and we could only have a little bit. We could have a 5-hour movie on just the stories that they have. So it was nice that they came out. I really appreciate that, you know. But they were all good friends back in the day.
Who was the Chris you knew that we didn't get to see? We knew him as the human thunderball that would just electrify the screen anytime he came on.
Yeah.
But who was the real Chris you saw behind the scenes?
Well, no, I mean, he's actually kind of a shy, you know, growing up. A shy guy that just really loved comedy. He sort of watched every single comedy show. If there was a movie, it would be comedy. And so he just knew what he wanted to do from a young age. He knew that's what he was. But he was essentially just a shy guy. But he was really good when he got on stage. He was really good at what he did.
Brent, what surprised you with some of the sentiments that were shared by these icons? David Spade, Adam Sandler, Bob Saget, and they're even hearing from Lorne Michaels was terrific.
Yes.
What surprised you, and what did you learn about Chris you didn't know before?
I learned that everyone has a naked story about Chris Farley. No, I just think, like Kevin said, these guys were his friends, and not just in show business, not just comedic partners. This wasn't just a business relationship they had. They all had a really special relationship with Chris, and they were here to share it. It's been 18 years, and they were ready to share the story.
You know, there's a comment from Chris in this movie surrounding the idea of when the fat man falls down, everybody goes home happy. Do you think Chris ever understood the power of his performance and how he really impacted people?
Well, yeah, you take that pratfall, which is a very, very difficult thing to do in comedy. I mean, physical comedy is probably the most difficult thing because it's physically, it hurts. And also, just to fall on a table the correct way is a very difficult thing. But I don't know if he appreciated the artwork of it. Everybody else, when you fall on a table, that's sort of just like, wow, that's crazy. I don't know if he appreciated that. I think that you know, a lot of his guys surrounding him were more cerebral comics. They were more political comics. He was coming from a clown perspective, and it just was a different beat of a different drum. I don't know if he appreciated it, but everybody else did, you know.
What do you guys hope, I mean, especially as filmmakers, that people know Chris Farley for? I mean, Lorne Michaels opens up about the acts of kindness that Chris would share when he was out in the public and people were recognizing him. What do you hope he's remembered for?
Well, you know, it's interesting. When we set out in the film, the mission, and when we first sat down with Kevin, was to really celebrate Chris's comedic genius and also have an opportunity to get to know who he was. And, you know, the tabloids had their moments with Chris, you know, prior to his death and afterwards, but we wanted to go and share with the world who Chris Farley really was. And, you know, you mentioned about his acts of kindness, but there were so many different stories, and that's what we tried to portray in the film, who this guy really was. And it was interesting because one of the things that we learned, Brent and I, coming into Madison, into Kevin's town, was that Chris Farley was born Chris Farley. You see the home movies and the stories that Kevin and his brothers and sister tell, and you find out that Chris Farley was on fire from day one.
Yeah, he was. He was kind of that kind of guy, even going to camp. And that once he stepped on stage, he was that guy. And then when he got off stage, he wanted to make you laugh. You know, he wanted to make people happy, even when he was just hanging out with them and all that kind of stuff. He was always the guy that, was going to do something to make everybody laugh. You know?
And what do you remember? It's just a summary for this entire documentary. The first time you ever saw Chris on stage, what was he doing? What stood out to you?
You know what? When we were like 12 at a camp we were at, he sang an Elvis song, and it was Teddy Bear.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you heard that song with Teddy Bear. Yeah. So he sang that song, and the whole audience gave him a standing ovation at the age of 12. And I go, wow, maybe this is what he could do for a living, you know. And so we just knew he was something that special when he got on stage, even at a young age.
Well, his legacy is being celebrated in a major way. Thanks to you, Kevin, Derik, and Brent. Excellent job with the movie. Real Theater tonight. You three are going to be there. You guys going to do a Q&A after the screening?
Yep.
Sure.
I'm sure
Tell stories and Q&A.
there'll be plenty of questions. All right, tonight and tomorrow, RioTheater.ca, your chance to find out more. And when it comes to the weekend, it's going to be raining. Sorry about the forecast.
Hey, I brought the rain. Sorry, folks.
He's from Wisconsin. He's almost Canadian.
Oh, so you're used to it. All right.